Alright. Today's time for case 3, I believe. I've gone through cases 1 and 2 already. Oh, we have puzzles from yesterday still. Um, yeah, I think I need to finish those before starting with case 3. So yeah, let's do that, I think. Let's get the old brain warmed up. One. There's an 11 done. So one of the ones. So one, that's a 1. Let's see. The 5 has to go there, which means part of a 5. That's 6. That's nothing. This is okay. It's almost over. Those are coins. Let's go. Oops. What am I doing? There we go. Okay, there's that. There's one. It's part of a 1. So that's the 5. That's nothing. Oh, that's the 1 and the 3. This could be something still. This is a 5. That is something. Oh, the 5 is still here. That's a 6. That has to be the. No, it doesn't have to be. Oh, okay. Okay, so these has to be the 5, and this has to be the 4. That's a 3, that's a 1, that is 4. 3, that's a 3, that's a 6. So 1, 1, 2, 2. That's a 2, 2, that's a 3. That's a 3 as well. That's complete, so that's part of the 5, which means this is a 4. Okay, yeah, just like that. This would have to be the 2. That's a 1 and that's a 5. Okay, that's a 4. That's a 1. This is going to be the 8. So that's complete. That's a 2, so that's a 3. 1, 1, that's complete. That's a 2, that's a 2, that's that. This is all done. That's the 1, that's complete. And so is this one, and so is this column. That, okay. It's a 3 and a 1, that is a 4, that's complete, that's a 2, that's a 5, 2, 3, a 2, and the 11. Books. Okay. Oh yeah, he was carrying books, I think. Okay. Ooh, 14. Fun. Fun. Ooh, 13. Fun. Okay. That is a 10. Goes up to there, and that's an 11. So that goes up to there. That's 2. That's a 2. Okay. That's a 1. That's a 1 as well, but that's a 7. That's a 5, so that has to be the 3. That's a 5 as well, so that has to be 3 as well. That's a 5. That's a 2. It's a 5. Yep. That's a 5 as well. That's another 5. This is a 9. I think that can go up to there. That's a 5. That's nothing. That's a 5. That's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 2. That's a 2. That is a full 8. That is a full 7. That's complete. That is a full 10. That is a 1. So that's an 11. That is a 2. That goes like there. That's a 9. That's a 4. That's a 2. That's a 2. And that's a 2. That's a 2. That's a 1 up there. That's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 9. Oops. That's a 4. That's a 4 as well. That's a 9. 2, 3, 3. 1, 1. Yep. That's a 3. That's complete, I think. That's a 9. That's fully done. And that's a 2, 3, 2, 7. Okay. It's a 5 and a 1 in this corner. There we go. That's a close rack. Okay, cool. Oh, we have quite a few. Alright, let's go. 13. That's a 1. That's a 1. That's another 1. That's a 4. That's 1. 3. 1. 1. 6. A 1. 1. That's a 0. That's a 1. That's right there. That's a 3. So that's nothing. That's a 6 up to there. This is a full row as well. That's a 3. That has to be the 3. Alright. So that's the 3. So hold on. That's a 1. That is a 1. Oops, that is a 6 right there. That's a 3. That's a 1. That there. This could be something. Not sure just yet. That's a 1 and a 1. So that's the 3. So that's the 1. That's a full 2. That can't be anything. So that could still be nothing. That's a 1. That's a 3. That's a 1. That's a 4. That's a 5. That's a 1 and a 1 and 1. That's a 3. Okay. That has to be part of the 3. The 4 goes up to there. That's nothing. That's nothing. That could be something. What else? What else? There's nothing. That's a 5. 1, 3. Oops. 1, 1. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, that's a 1 and a 1. The 13 should have come here. Okay, from the start. Oops. That's a 1. That's nothing. That's a 1 or a 2. It's a 2 actually. 4, 1, 1. And there we go. Tis a coaster. We're gonna close today. Oops. Okay, let's see. What else do we have here? Ooh. 1, 1. Oh, that's not correct. I did too much. 1, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a 5. That's a 1. That's a 2. So the 9 can go up to there, I believe. Okay. Oh, that's a 1. So that's a 5. That's a 1. This is a 1. That has been nothing. This isn't a full row, is it? No. It's almost. No, not quite almost, but good enough. That is a 2 and a 2 and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 and 2. 1, 5. 1, 1, 1. Oh, that's a complete row. Let's go. 1, 2, 1. Okay. Oops. 8, 2, 2. 2. 1, 3. That is. Whoops. What am I doing? 3. 2. That is a 2 as well. 2. Oh, those can't be anything. 5 can go there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6, 7. Okay, 2. That's a 3. That's a 4. That's a 3. That's a 2. That's nothing. So the 7 goes up to there. Okay. That can be anything. That can be anything. Right. Yes. Those can't be anything. Can those? Huh. Okay. Oh. Okay. Yep. I missed this. That's complete. That's nothing. That's a 2. That's there. That is... what else? What else? Oh. What am I missing? Yeah, what am I missing? That can be anything. Okay. Okay. Buff. Ooh, I don't know what I'm missing. Oh. Ooh. Yeah, I don't know. What could it be? What is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? 3? No. It's 4? No. 2, 5? 1, 7. Ooh, I don't know what it is. Oh, that's gotta be 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there we go. That's a 3, okay. That's a 2. So, okay, that doesn't help me that much. That can't be anything. So the ones have to go there. That's part of the 2. So that goes to 2. That's nothing, which means the 2 goes there. So that's the 3. That's the 1. That's the 2 complete. So the 2 goes there. Okay. That's a 9. That's complete. So this 10 goes at the bottom. There's nothing there. That's done. That's done. Oh, the 6 can be completed. That's nothing. That's nothing. That's just the 1. That's nothing. That's a 2. That's complete. That's a 4. That's complete, and that's complete. So the 1s go there. That's 5. That's nothing. That's a 2. That's a 4. That's a 7. And we're done. It's toilet paper. Okay. Cool. Let's go for the next one. Okay. 9. 1 and 4 and 4. Okay. That's gonna be at least up to 5, so we can work with that. Okay, that's, oops. That can be the 5, so it has to be the 5, actually. That's 2 and a 3 and a 4. Okay, so that's the 4. The 5 can go up to there, so there's that. The 9 is there. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oops. Oh, there's a lot here. 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's a big row. So it's this one. Okay. Oh, the one above I believe as well. That's 1, 1, 2. Yeah. 4, 2. Okay. Okay, so that's the 5. That's a 1. There's a 3 there. That's 2. That is a 4. That is part of a 7. That can be there. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Right, so 1. Oh. No, wait. Oh, yeah, this is shorter than the other one. Yeah, it's not quite as obvious. That's something. 5. Yeah, okay. But 5 is complete. That's the 3, so that's a 1. There's a 1 in here. Oh, that's a 2, so that's something there. So that's nothing. That's a 5. That's there. That's a 3. Okay. What else? What else? There we go. Yeah, so this has to be a 2, so that's nothing. That's a 7 up in there. That's nothing. That's a 3. That's a 1, and that's part of the 2. Okay. Okay. Hmm. What else? What else? What else? What else? Oops. Okay, so that's part of the 5. That's a 4. Those are 1s. That's a 7, right? Yes, yes it is. That's a 1. Okay. Has to be a 1, yes. A 1 and a 2. That's nothing. Oh, that's a 1 and a 3, okay. Okay, so that's not a 2. That's a 2 there. So that means these are not. There's nothing there. There's something there. That is nothing. That's a 2. That's complete. Oh, light, isn't it? There we go. Oh, then that is complete. Okay. And there's a 1. There's nothing. This is a 7 there. That is a 1. That's a 2 and a 3. That is a 1, 1, 1. That is a 1. So that helps with the 7. That's done. That's done there. That's a 3. That's a 1. That's a 2. That's a 7. That's nothing. That's complete, so that's nothing. That's a 2, so that's nothing. That's nothing. That's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 1. Okay. We're almost done. There we go. Hello. Ooh, what is that? Okay, let's go. Let's see. We have okay, we have everyone here. 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 7. 2. That's nothing. 4, 1, 1. That is a 6 up to there. And the 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 3, 3. That's a 4. That is a 4 again. 1. Okay, the 5 is here. 2, 3. That's 4. That's complete. That is a 7 up to there. That's a 4 up to there. That's a 2. That is part of the 4. That's a 1. Oh, 3. That's a 2. These are nothing. That's a 3. So these are nothing. These are nothing. That's a 3. That's a 6. That's an ace somewhere. That's nothing. Okay. That's the 3 there. And I think we're done with that side. Okay, 1, 3. That's complete. That's a 3, 2. Oops. 2. 3, 2. 3, 1. I don't know about that age. Just yet. Just yet. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's a 2 on a 1. That's complete. That's a 3. That's there. Okay, that's a 3. That is a 3 right there. So that's a 4. That's nothing. That's a 4 somewhere. Oh, the 9. Okay. Oh, and the 6. And the 7. Okay. Those 3s are complete. This column is complete. This goes up to there, and this goes up to there. That's a 3. So that can't be anything. That's a 3. That's a 4. That's a 3. That's a 4. Okay, that's that's a 3. That's a 3. Okay, that's a 2 and a 1. 3. 1. That's a 1 as well. So that's the 7 complete. That's a 4. That's a 3. That's a 4. That's a 3. That is an 8. Okay. That's 6 goes up to there. That's a 7 complete. That's a 3. That's done. That's a 4. That's a 2. That's an 8. Cool. Cool. Not the 4. It's the 6. Oops. There we go. Ooh. Plunger. Cool. Yeah, so this is from where we were in the bathroom. What do we have next? Ooh. There we go. Okay. That is a 3. Running a bit slow, I think. There we go. Ooh, 1 and 11. Okay. 2. Okay, and 10. Okay. Right. That 8 is there. That's 6. Is that okay? 2 and 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, that's a complete row. Okay. That's 4, 4, 4, 3, 8. 2. That's nothing. So that's 8. That is 8 up to there. That's a 6 up to there. That's a 2. That's a 2 as well. So the 3 can be there. That's a 1. That is there. That's the 3. No. Well, it could be the 3. Actually, can't. It has to be the 8. So there's that. So this is the 3. 2. That's a 2. That is a 1. That is a 3. That is a 6. So 1. That's nothing. That's at least a 2. That's a 4. That can't be 3. So that's there. That has to be the 2. Because this is the 6. That's complete. That's a 3. That's a 2. That's the 8. That's a 6. That's a 5. That is a 4. That is an 8 there. This is a 6 there. This column is all complete. That's 1, 1, 1, 1. That's a 1 and a 2. That's a 4. That is a 3. That doesn't help. That's a 3. Okay. That is an 8. No. It's a 3. That is a... That's a 1. That's a 1. Okay. This is a 3. So that's the 8. That's a 3. Oops. That's a 3. That's 10. There. Okay, yeah, that's a 3. That's a 3 somewhere in there. That's at least a 2. Actually, it has to be... Oops. There we go. That's a 1. That's a 1. This is a 3, so this is a 4. That's a 2. That's nothing. So that's a 1. That's a 3. So this has to be a 4. That's a 2. That's a 2. That is done. That is done. That's a 2. That is done. That's a 4. That's a 3. That's a 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's complete. That's a 3 and a 1. I believe it's a glass or champagne. No, we had that already. It's a glass of something. No, it's a party popper. Cool. Popper. Okay, what else do we have? Oh, the S puzzles. Good. Okay. That's a 1 and a 12. That's 2, 2, 2, and 5. So that's close to being something. Okay, that's part of the 5 right there. That's part of the 6, the 8. That's a 7, 6. Okay. Okay, so this has to be part of the 3. And this can't be anything here. Okay. 5, 2, 3. Oops. Okay. That's a 5. That has to be the 5 down there. Okay. Okay. This column is done. What does that help us with? This. Okay. That's the 5, so that's nothing there. This has to be one of the 2s. So that's the 7, that's a 3. That's a 2, that's a 1, that's a 3, that's a 3, that's a 4, that's a 2. That is the 6. That's a 2 as well. Well, these columns are done. That's a 2. That's a 5. That's a 5 as well. That's a 4. This has to be a 6. And that has to be part of the 3, so that's nothing. That's nothing. Okay, that's a complete 4. That's a 5. Okay. That has to be the 2. So that has to be the 1. That's a 2. That's a 2. Okay. That's nothing. Okay, same thing here. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there we go, that's a 3. That can, oops, that can't be anything, so that has to be the 1. That's that. That's a 6. Okay, that's a 5 and the 2. Okay, that's a 5. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, there we go. This is 1 to 8, under 1. This is also 8. This is nothing there. Also nothing here, so that's a 4. That's a 6, so that's complete. That's a 2. If this is a 5, that's a 1. That's a 4, that's a 2 and a 1. That's complete. That's a 2, that's a 4, that's a 1. And we're missing something here, and here, and here. There we go. Oh. TV camera. Ooh. And just one more puzzle. Let's go. Okay. That's an 11. That's a 5. That's an 8. That's a 2 already. That's a 2. It's a 4 and a 1 and a 3, I think. Okay. Also, that 8 is there. That's a 3. Okay. Okay. We have something more here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's a 4, that's a 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I can do more. How much more can we do though? Okay, there's something promising. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And that's a 7, so it goes up to there. That's part of 4, that's part of the 6. That doesn't do much. The scooter could not be something. Oh. Okay. This is missing 2 and this is missing 4. That doesn't help. That doesn't help either. Oh well, this can't be anything. Oh, okay, so this can't be... It has to be part of the 5, okay. Okay. Okay, so this has to be part of the 3, so that can't be anything, so this is something, and there we go, and this is part of the 8. Okay, and that's the 2, okay, now we're doing something. Right. Yeah, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That can be part of the 6, so it has to be the 2. So that line is complete. Say 4, that's at least a 2. Could be the 3. That's the 5, that's a 3 and a 5. That's a complete 4. That can be anything, so that's a complete 6 right there. That's a 2. That's a 5, that's a 3. That's nothing, and so is this. None of these are anything. That's the 2, that's a 5 up to there. That's a 3. That's nothing, so that's a 2. That's nothing, that's a 5. That's a 3. That's a 2, that's a 3, that's a 5 and a 4. That's an 8. That is, has to be the 6. So this is a 1. That is also an 8. That's a 2, that's a 6. That's a 5. That is a 4, that's a 2. That's a 4, okay, that's a 2. There we go. Nothing, so that's a 6, that's complete, that's a 5, that is a 3 right there. So all of these are done. Okay, that's a 4, that's nothing, so the 4 goes up to there, that's a 2, that's a 4, that's a 3, that's complete. All of this is complete. That's a 4, and that's a 3. That's a 2, that's a 5. That's nothing, so that, there we go, that's that. That is a 7, that's another 7, that 4 is complete, that's a 2. And we're missing just this one here. Cool. What's this? What's this? Cufflinks. Okay. And yeah. Okay, so at this point, now that we've solved all of these puzzles, at this point we've unlocked this memory. I think it would be better if it showed like a little fanfare showing that this is now unlocked, because the first time it did this I didn't realize it was locked in the first place. So of course I didn't realize it was unlocked after that. So yeah, we don't have to play that just now. It's just story, so you know. So I think we can start with the third case now. Yeah, I think we can do that. Right then, let's go. That bleep sounds so much like the Ace Attorney one. I don't know if it's the same one. It sounds very much like it. Cool. Hey, something happened. Something's wrong with this one, eh? Oh wow. Come on. Okay. Starting quick, are we? No, let's consult with the man first. This is you too, yeah? Hehehehe. Yeah, so what happened? She didn't run. Okay. 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 That's helpful. Well, we haven't taken a look yet. We're asking for permission. Okay. Okay. We're not carrying anything, are we? Nope. Okay. Bye. Okay, so what happened? Okay. Who's Fran? Okay. Tasia. Cool. Oh. Yeah, where's Fran now? Cool. Okay. Oh. Okay, cool. Okay, what can we find? Let's see. Pum, 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 pum. Going a thorough look. There was something at the door. Okay. Anything else? Okay. There's the body. There's some plants. There's some plants there. Right, there's there. I think that's all. Yeah, there seems to be 4 things. Let's do it. Let's go. Ooh. Sorry, big. Okay. 8, 2. Okay, that is 3. Oops. That's 3, 3. That's 4. That's nothing. The 12 goes up to there. That's an 8, 2. 9. Oh, 10. Okay. There we go. 2. Okay, 4 and 7. That's. Oops. There we go. 6, 1, 12. Wow. Okay. That is 9. That goes up to. What's that? 7? 8. Okay. 3. 1, 3, 4, 2. 9. That's as far as I go, I think. No, that's not true. Okay, there we go. 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, and 6. 4. 2. Okay. That is a 3. Yes, that's a 2, 10. That's it. Okay. 3. Spotted 7. That's a 3. That's a 4. That is a 3. So the 7 goes there. So the 9 is complete. There we go. It's a 5, 6, 7. Okay. 4, 2. Okay, 2. 6, 7, 8. There we go. That's a 3. That's a 2. The 8 is complete. That's a 3. That's a 4. Go. And the 10. Okay. Okay. That's a 3. That's a 6. Okay. That is a 12. That's complete 2. That's a 2. Okay. Now. 3. So that's a 2. That is a 1. So that's a 2. Okay. That's a 1. 1, 3, 2. It's a 1. That's a 2. It's a 2. That's a 1. That's nothing. Okay, that's a 4, so that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 2, that's a 3. That's complete, that's a 1. There's a 3 somewhere in there. That's complete, that's a 2, that's a 1, that's a 1, that's complete, that's a 2, that's complete. That's a 1 and a 1. That's a 1 and a 1. That's 3 and the 1. And we found a wheel. Okay. Well, from the car, I would assume. Okay. Okay, oh, shut up. That's... Okay, so that's the tire, okay. Yeah, about the body. 3, 1, 2. Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Okay. Oh, there aren't that many useful hints, I think. Don't think. Okay. Yeah, okay. Boof. No, that's 2, 2. Oh, okay. Here's more hopeful. Okay, okay, there we go. No. Yeah, these just told me much just yet. Wait. Oh? Oh, this is a little column. Okay. Okay, so that's part of the 5. Okay. That has to be at least a 3, so that's a 1. That's part of the 5, so that's a 1, that's a 2, so that's a 4, that's a 1, a 1, and a 1, and a 2, that's complete. That is a 5, that's a 2 and a 1, that is the 3, so that's complete. That is the 2. That has to be the 2 and the 3, because this is... Oh, that's not the case. That's not the case at all. Okay. Okay. It's a 1, and that's a 2, and that's a 3. Okay, that's a 1, and a 2, and a 2, and a 3. Okay. Okay. That is part of the 3. That is part of the 5. That's a 1. Oops, that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3. What am I doing? There we go. That's at least a 2. It has to be a 2. That 3 is complete. That 5 can't go there. What else? Okay, that's a 3. That has to be part of the 6. Doesn't fit anywhere else. This has to be part of the 6 as well. That can't be, so that's part of the 2. That's part of the 5. So that's part of the 2. That is part of the 6. That's a 3. Okay, that's a 3 again. 2. 2. Okay. 6. Okay, 1. 2. 2. Okay, that's a 2 and a 1. That is complete. That's complete. That is complete. That's a 1. That's a 3. That's a 2. And that's a 1. That's a 2. That's a 2. And we found... I don't know what that is. A passport. Okay. There's Oliver Laurel. Okay. Passport. Okay. Yeah, let's keep looking at stuff. Oh yeah, I can't use the keys for some reason. Some planting there. There we go. What do we have here? 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, okay. 1, 1. Ooh. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 1, 2. Yes, that's one of the ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, okay. Okay. We're making some progress. Okay, that's a 2, that's a 1, that's a 2, that is a 1, that is a 5, that is a 4, that is a 2. That's a 2, that is a 4 and a 1, that's complete, that is a 1. That's complete, that's part of the 5, so that's a 1 and 1. And that's part of the 3, that's the 2, that's the 1, that is a 1 in there, so that's complete. What else? 1, 2, 3, so that's something. That 3 has to be there, that's a 1, that's a 1, that's a 5, that's a 1, that's complete. That's the 1, that's the thing, that's the 5, that's the 3 and a 1, that's complete, that's a 2. Well, that's nothing. That's nothing, so that's the 3, that's a 1. That's for the 2, so that's nothing, that's a 1, that's a 1. Okay, that's the 2, that's the 1, that is 1 there, that's a 2, 2, okay. That's a 1, so that's a 3, and that's the 2. And we found broken tile. Okay. Oh, okay. Speedometer. Okay. Yeah. And the door of the stairs. Okay, where do we start? There, I think. 2, 1, 1, 2. Hmm. 4, okay, so that's nothing, so that has to be the 3, I think. That's a 4, okay, that's a 1 and a 2, that's a 1, that's a 1. That's nothing, so that's a 1, 1, 3, like that, yes. So that's a 2, that's a 3. That's a 2, so that's the 1 in the column. 1, 1, 2, okay, so that's one of the ones, that's a 3. That's a 4. Ba, 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 bum. That's something there. 1, 2. Wait, 2, 1, 2. Oh, okay. Ooh. What else? Okay, that's a 1 and a 2. Oops, that's a 1 and a 2. Yes. That's a 2, that's a 1. Oh, that was, okay, that was complete. Way before. That's one of the 2s, so that's a 1. And that's a 3, so that's the 2, that's the 2. That's the 1. That's one of the ones. That's a 3, okay. Okay, that's part of 3. That has to be the 2 like that. That's a part of 2, and that's the 4, that's a 2, that's nothing. And that's complete. That is the 2. 1, 1, 1, there we go. That's 1. Okay, that's a 2. That's, there we go, there we go. There we go. There we go. We have found. Oh, left sneaker. Okay. Whose? Yeah, cool. Okay. Whose would be found? I think these they were trying to hit him. This is murder. Oliver? Oh, cool. Okay. I guess. Nothing. Alright. Certificate of murder. The vehicle he declared on purpose. It was an accident. I didn't know if it was murder. I mean, I didn't know if it was intent. They were trying to kill him. Um, I don't know. Yeah, let's go with the club hypothesis. Oh, hello. Bar. Cool. Let's see what we can find. Yep. We're making a thorough investigation. Looking around. There's one thing. One thing only. Okay. There it is. Ooh, okay. This is a big one. I wonder how big they go. Okay. Oops. Okay, that's a 2. That's a 2. Can't be the 1. And it can't be the 6. I mean, it can't be the 2, so it's gotta be the 6. Okay, that's a 1, that's a 1, that's a 1, that is a 1 as well. Okay, cool. Make some quick progress, I think. Okay, so that's a 2. That is a 3. That is a 4. That is a 1 as well, and so are all these. That's a 2 in there, that's a 1. That's a 1, that's a 1. So this is a 2, that's a 2. That is the 8 all the way there. That's a 2 as well, that's a 2, that is a 2. That is a 2, that is a 2. That is also a 2. Okay. Oh, that's the full 5. Oops, that's a full 5. That's a full 5. That's a 2. That's a 2. That is an 8. That is a 1 and a 2. That is a 1 and a 1. That is a 2. That is a 3. That's a 2. Okay. That's complete. Okay, let's see. That's one of the ones. That's a 1 as well. One of these is a 1, I don't know which. But this is a 5, and this is a 7. That's a 4. They're all 1s. Okay, that is a 3. No, what? What am I doing? There you go. That's a 3. That is a 3. That's a 3. That's a 2. That is a 4. The 2 and the 1, 1. Okay. That is a 2, and that's also a 2, and that's a 2. That's a 5. Okay. That's a 1 and a 2. That's a 3, so that's a 1. That's a 2, so that's part of the 6. That's complete. That's a 4. That's also a 4. There we go. That's a 1 and a 1. That's the 2. That's a 4. Okay. So that's okay. And we are almost done. It's a flag. Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, that's what we found. So, oh, okay, yep. Fantasia. That's it. That's a good name. Yeah. So, this is your club, eh? Proprietress. Yep. Suspects. Okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's kind of obvious. Yeah. Oh. Can you tell me about this? Do you know this person? Oh. Um, Let's see, can we find anything? Oops. Okay. That's 5, that's 1, and a 7, and a 7, and an 8. Let me say 6, and a 5. 4, 4, 4, 2. 1, 1, 2, and 4. 3, yep, 1, 1, okay. 3, 3, okay. Okay. Pretty cool. Yeah, so that has to be a 4. Has to be a 2. That's a 2. Okay, let's go on the other side. Okay, so that's a 3, and that's a 5, and that's a 1, and that's a 4. That is a 1, and a 4, and a 2, and a 2, and a 1, and a 1, and a 2. Okay, that's a 2, that's a 3. That is a 2, that's a 1, that is a 3. Okay. That is a 2, that is a, oops, that is a 1. That is a 2, that is a 1. That's a 1, a 1, a 1. That's a 3, that's a 2. Okay. This has to be the 7, yeah. That's a 1, that's a 3. That's a 3. Okay, that's a 2, that's a 2. Okay, that's a 1, so that's a 2. That's a 1, yep, that's a 3. That's can't be anything, yep. Okay. Okay, that's something. That's something as well. And that's a thing. Ooh. Okay, so that's a 2. That's a 5. And that's nothing. That is a 2 and a 5. That is a 2 and nothing. This is also done. And that is done. That is also... There we go. Yep. Oops, that's not something. That's something. Okay, this is a book, I think. Okay. 1, 2, 1. Yep. Oops. Oh, I'm missing something. Oh, okay. There we go. The diary. Oh. We're making progress. Yes. Come on. Mama. Okay. No. Okay. Fine. What do you want? Actually, I don't really care, I think. No. Okay, let's see. Let's see. One, two, three. Oh, three and the three and the two. That's pretty cool. Six. That's a five. And oops, and that's okay. Cool, 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 cool. That's a seven all the way. That's okay, 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 okay. That's a one. Okay, that is a four. That is a three. That is a one. That's a three. That's complete. That could be anything. That's one. That's one. That's one. Okay. A oof. Oof. What are we seeing here? Well, that's something, I think. Um, okay, wait. That's a four. One, one, two, one, two, three, four. Okay, so that's not. That's a one, that's a two, that's a two, that's a six. That's way too much. There we go, three. On the two and a one. Okay, that's a one. That could be either. That's a three. That is a four. Yes. That's a three. That is a two. That's a two on the one. Oops, that's a two. Okay. Okay, that's a one. Um, yeah, this has to be a seven, right? So that's a one. That's a four. That is a one. That's a two. This has to be a five. Okay. That is a one. That is a two. That's a two. Oops, that's a two. That's a three. So that's a two. That's not. It's not a two. That's complete. That's complete. That is. There we go. That is a one and a one. That's a three. So that's complete. That is a three. So that can be anything. That's a five. That's a three. That's complete. Oh. Okay, that's a three. Okay. That's a two. What? What's this? Okay. Okay. That's a good title, I think. Okay. Tail? Huh? What am I doing back here? Yeah. Oh, straight. 4. Okay. Okay. Do I need to go? What's there to find in here? Okay. Um. Okay. Oof. What's going on? What is going on? So 1 1 1 2 1 2. Okay, that is almost a 5. Oh, that's a 1 1. Okay, that's a 5. That is a 3 or a 1. I'm not sure. What do we have here? Okay, that's a 4. It's not gonna be the 2. Yeah, that doesn't help much. Oh, okay. 1 1 2 3 4. Okay. Um. Hmm. Oh, well, this has to be the 2. That's a 1. That could still be anything, but this is a 4, so this is a 2, so this is a 1. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's go. That's a 4, that is a 1 or a... That's a 2, okay. That's a 2. Cool, that's a 4. That's a 3. That is a 6, that goes all the way there. That is a 4, that goes up to there. That is a 2, that's a 3. Okay, that's a 1, that's a 1. And... Okay. Oh, 1, 1, whoops. 1, 1, okay. Okay. 3. Okay. Ooh, 5. Cool. 4. There you go. 3. That's the 4. That's a 1. That is a 2. Okay. That's a 2. So this is a 2. That's a 1. That's a 1. Okay, that's a 1. That's a 4. Cool. That is... Okay, that has to be that. That. 3. Cool. 1, 1. 3. 4. Okay. And 3. And 3. Okay. 3. That's nothing. That's... Oops, that's a 2. That is a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 2. Okay, 1, 1, 2. And we're done. What's this? A broken bottle. Bottle. Okay. Okay. Hello. Oof. Oh, yeah. So what is your matter? Anyway, a bottle. We found a bottle. Okay, that is completely useless. What? What? Okay. Yeah. Let's go inside, I guess. Sister. Okay. Okay, what did he leave behind? Where is it? Where is it? Is it there? Okay. Ooh. One, one, two. Okay, okay. That is a 4. That is a 5. That is a 12. All the way over there. That's a 3. Oops, that's a 3. That's there. That's... Oh, actually, I... Sure. That's a 4. Okay, so it is a 3. There we go. That's a 2. That that's a 3. That's a 2. Okay, that is a 4. That is a 1. That is a 2. That's a 5 complete. Next number 10. Oh, that's too far. 3 and 4. That is... Whoops, that is a 4. That is a 3 right there. Okay, okay, that's a 6. That's a 2. That is a 2. That is a 4. That's a 2. That's a 2. That is nothing. That is 4. That's a 2 and a 1. Okay, that is a 1 and a 1. That is a 2 and a 1 and a 1 and a 1. Okay, that is a 1 and a 2. Okay, okay, okay. That is a 1 and 2. Oh, oops, that's a 3. That's a 3. That's nothing. And that's a 5 and a 1. Cool, that's a 3. That's a 2. And that is a 5. That is a 1. That is a 3. Okay, that's a 1 as well. That is a 3, so that's a 4. That's a 7 all the way there. That's a 4. That is a 4 as well, so that's the 3. That's the 3, right? No. There we go. That's a 5, and that's a 3. And that is a 3 right there. That's a full 6. That's a 2, and the 2, and the 3. That is a 12 and a 1. That's a 12. Okay. That's a 4. That is a 1. That's a 2. Okay, okay. We're making progress. That's a 1. That's a 3. That's a 1. That's a 2. That's a 1. That's complete. That's a 3. Okay, that's a 1 and a 3 and a 1. So that's a 1. That's a 1 and a 2. Right? That's a 1. Another 2. Yes, that's a 2. So that's a 1 and the 4. That's a 2. Okay, that's a 2. Is it? Yes. That's a 4. That's a 3. That's a 3. That's a 2. That is a 2 there. That's a 1 and a 1. That's a 1 and a 1. And another 1. And that's a 3. And that is a 1. And we're complete. We are done. Code. Is it the drink? Oh. Oh, there's some more to find. Okay. Oh, oof, come on. Okay, there's something there. There's something anywhere else? Does it seem like it? Okay. Where is it? There we go. Okay. It's 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. It's 4. That is a 3. That is a 4. A 2 and a 2. That's a 3. That is a 4 and 6. Okay. Okay. Yep. That's a 3. That is a 2. That is a 4. That's a 1. So that's a 4. And that's a 6. And that's a 5. So that's a 3. And that is a 5. That is a 1 and a 3. Okay, okay. That's a 3, that's a 2, that's a 4, that's a 2, that's a 6, that's a 1, that's a 9, that's that, and that. Okay. That's a 4, so that's a 1, that is a 3, that is a 9 all the way there. Yes, that's a 2, that's an 8, not complete just yet. There we go. That's 2, that's a 3, that's a 1, that is a 3, that is a 2 and a 2. Say, oops, that is a 3. That is a 1, that is a 3. That is a 1, that is a 2, not just yet. 1 and a 1, that's a 1, that is a 2, that is done, that's a 3. That's a 1. Okay. Up here we have 3 and a 2 and a 2, that's a 2 right there. Okay, that is a 3. That is a 2 and a 3, that's a 1. That's a 2 right there. That is a 2 right there as well. It's a 2 and a 1, 2. Yeah, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 1, 1 and 1, 2. That's something. Oh, that's a 2. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's a 3. Of course, that's a 1. That's a 1 and a 3. Just like that, and that's a 3. So that's a 1, and that's a 1, and that's a 3. That is a 2. That's a 3. Well, that's something. That's a... Whoops, that's a 2. That is a 1 and a 1 and a 2. So it goes like that. That's a 1. That is a 2 and a 1 and a 1. That is a 2. It goes like that. That's a 1 and a 1. That's a 2 and a 2 and a 1 and a 1 and a 2 and a 2. And another 1 and a 3. Okay. Oh, that's a 1 and a 1 and a 1. There we go. That's 1 and 1 again. It's a 2. That's a 2 as well. There we go. That's a 2. Let's just get it out of the way. That's a 2. It's a 1. That's a 3. That's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 4. There we go. We're done. No, we're not. Oh, there we go. What is this? Laptop. Oh. Oh. Okay. Oh. 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 Hmm. Oh, cool. Okay. What can you tell us about? Yeah, this bottle. Oh, what about this coat? Oh, okay, it's yours. Now, how might you be? Okay. Uh, hehehehe. Hello. But yourself. Yeah, of course that's the point. Uh, yeah, how about the victim? Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, okay. Right. Oh. Or were you last night? 11:30. Okay. 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 Can you tell us something about... Oh, yeah, your tour. Ah, yeah, there we go. The code and the broken bottle. Oh. Okay. I mean, that's fair, yeah. I guess. Oh, hee. I've done this. What's this? Okay. Oh, ooh, okay. Okay, up, that's a 4. That is a 6, that's a 2, that is a 1. Okay, that's a 2, that's a 2, that's a 1, so that's a 3. Okay, that's part of the 4. There you go, that's a 3, that's a 6. That is a 6 as well. That is a 3, that's a 2. So 1, 1. 5, 4. Whoops. There you go. 4, 4. Yep, 1, 3. That's one of the ones. That's a 3, and that's another one. That's a 4. That is a 7. Okay. That is a 9. I'm not gonna touch that just yet. Okay. That's a 4. That is a 4 as well. That's a 3. That's a 3. That is a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and the 1 and the 2 and the 4 and the 3. Yes, and the 4. And the oops, and the 6. 1, 1. Oops, 2. That's a 1. That's probably a 1. That's a 4. That's a 2. That's a 1 and a 1. That's a 2. That is a 9. So that's a 2. That is there. That's a 2. The 9 goes up to there. That's a 1 and a 1. Nope. There you go. 5 and 3. Okay, that is nothing. That is nothing as well. That's there you go. That's one of the ones. That's nothing. Okay, so these rows are complete. That's a 2 and the 2. Okay. I don't know if that's part of the 3. That's a 2. Okay. Has to be the 1. That's a 4. That's a 2. That's a 2. That is a 1. That's the 2. Okay. Okay. Oops. Okay. That's a 2. Okay. That's a 4. 2. 2. Yes. 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 And there we go. It is a photograph. Cool. Oh. Okay. Fine. Okay. Oh, hello. No. Okay, mother, what do you want? Okay. Was there anything else? Okay. Now, what do you have to tell me about this? Okay. Yeah, of course you did. Well, this is information I had, so okay. To get you fired, yeah, we already knew this. A trap. I don't trust in that laptop anymore. Oh, spin. Who are you? Why do I know it? Who are you? Casey? Crispin Hickwell. Okay. 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 Oh, what can you tell me about this? What can you tell me about this shoe? What can you tell me about this wheel? Okay, never mind. Okay. Why is this an option now? Why can't I go to the dressing room? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, hello. I see you there. Okay, I can see two things, I think. There's one right in the middle. There's one over there. Okay. So, where was it? So around here. Was it? There we go. Yeah, so as you might guess, we're solving another murder. Uh, okay, what happened? So we were called. We started the case, and we were immediately called. There's been a murder. And we go, and it's our boy Casey, um, and he's outside a drug bar, and there's just a giant shoe embedded onto the window, on the front window, and there's a body underneath. So we started investigating, and apparently he was a regular at the bar, um, and he might have the giant shoe thing was like what do you call them? Like those parade things, I think. I don't know what you call them. Um, but it crashed into him, or he got run over by it, and then the thing crashed into the bar, and he died. So we're trying to figure out what happened, right? So far, what else has happened? Um, maybe it's like yeah, I generally don't know what you call them. Uh, Imagine like a little cart with wheels and then a giant shoe on top of that, or a giant stiletto on top of that. Um, right, and that's the thing that run him over. Yeah. So that happened, and then we started asking questions. The owner of the place. Oh, okay, upper right float. Yeah, upper right float, I guess. Yes, yes, yes. The owner of the place, a drag queen who goes by the name of. Oh, what is it? What is it? It's a pun. Of course, it's a pun. They're all puns. What is it? It's. Oh, I don't remember. In any case, you'll probably see her at some point. Yeah, so she's telling us what happened. She doesn't really give us much information about that. She tells us about the guy. He was a regular. He had been in a fight with another one of the performers, and then he died. And so then this performer, another drag queen, goes by the name of Rose Moses, I think it is. Um, uh, it turns out that yeah, she had been in a fight with them. Um, that night, the night before he died, like they met each other outside the bar, and apparently there was a little scuffle. So they took her to interrogate her, but apparently she didn't do it. Like she had an alibi, so we still don't know who it is. In the meantime, our ex-husband showed up, and their mom showed up because they were worried about us. Ryan, the ex-husband, was like, why are you still doing this? Why do you come work at my company, right? Uh, I'll talk good about you. I'll let you get a job in there. And we're like, yeah, hell no, we're not doing that. So he's a bit pissy about that. And we also found out that from the first case, the guy who murdered the director, I think he was the director, the guy who murdered the victim, uh, he ended up doing that because he was blackmailing him, and then the victim was going to call the cops, the police, and that's why he got killed. The person who killed them, Tully, right? He had a picture of us. He had a picture of us at the award ceremony of our show, with the face of Blake, the victim, his face circled. And we were like, okay, why does he have the picture? And it turns out this picture, it was one that we had taken and we had given to our mom, right? So we were like, okay, if I give it to my mom, why did Tully have it? And we went and confronted mom, our mama, and she told us that she gave it to Ryan, our ex-husband. And so we sort of figured out that Ryan hired Tully to blackmail Blake in order to fire us. So, you know, a real pitch that Ryan. And yeah, I think that's all the info we have on all the things that have been going on. I think you're up to speed now. I'm gonna continue this little puzzle we have here. Hello, beans. Oh, no, okay. I thought it made a mistake, and I had, but I fixed it. So genius. Okay, 111. Uh, uh, oh, oh, okay. There we go. We have found desktop PC. Okay. A computer. That's all? Okay, we're gonna do some hacking. Okay, let's go. These are time puzzles, and you're not allowed to use the cross, so you'll just have to uh, yeah, we're not allowed to cross out tiles in this sort of puzzle. And it's also time. I think I said that already. Um, ooh. So you know that's interesting. The fact that it does at some point, yeah, some points it does have a different mechanical ways to play the puzzles, which conceptually mean different things. So that's fun. That's a really fun thing. So far in these three cases, there's only been like the regular puzzles and the hacking puzzles. I'm sure they could have done more with that, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, yes, there's still something to find. Something else. Yeah. What do we have here? Okay. Okay. That's not it. That's a 2 and a 2. That's a 2. Hello. 3, 2. What am I doing? Okay. This isn't working out. What happened here? Oh, I made a mistake. I made a very big mistake. Yes, I don't know what's going on. Okay, let's try this again. That's a 2, that's a 2, that's a 2. That's a 4. Okay. That's a 2, so that's a 4. That's a 2. There's a 5 somewhere in there, yeah. Okay, that's a 3. Okay. That is a 2, and that's a 2. That is a 5, that is a 2, that's a 2, that's a 2. Okay. Oops, there we go. Okay, what are you having for dinner? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 1, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 2, 1. Yeah, okay. 2, 2, 4, 1, 2. Okay. 2 and 2. Okay. 2, 1 and 2. Oh, that is also complete. Marvelous. Wonderful. Uh, okay. Okay, okay. Okay, that's a 2 and a 2. That's complete. That is a 1. That is a 1. That is a 2. Okay, okay. That is a 2, 1, 2. Okay, 2, 1, 2. Okay, 2. We're done. Headers. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, come on. Oh. Wow. Okay. Huh? Oh. Yep. Hee hee hee. We're investigators after all. Did you buy the club? Okay. Okay. Okay, so what can you tell us about those letters? Okay, sure, sure. What can you tell us about this computer? Oh yeah, so this is the owner of the club, right? She goes by Frontasia. Okay. Is there anything else we need? I don't know. Okay. Okay. I don't think you're telling us the truth. You did get a loan. Did you? Second business, performing at a rival club. What do we know? There was a guy outside who might have been looking for her. No, she would have been running a second business, right? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Okay. Any minute now. Okay. doing alright, thank you. How about you? Well, that's good. We're streaming from South America. It's getting close to midnight, or where I'm from. What's going on here? Very annoying. Okay. Okay, there we go. Let's confront this man. Mhm. Okay, so we're gonna have to show some evidence, right? Yeah. So this is the picture. This is a picture that we gave to our mom, that then she gave to this man, Ryan, who's her ex-husband, uh, who seems like he then gave to somebody else, who was blackmailing our boss to get us fired, which did happen. Uh, and then our boss got killed by the same guy who was blackmailing him because he threatened to call the police. So yeah, it seems like this is the man who's behind all that. So we're gonna confront him. Let's see what he has to say. Yeah. Oh, let's go. Yeah, all right. Okay. Sure. Okay, bye. Yeah, we're a pretty good actress, I think. Okay. Alright, let's do some investigating, I think. Hello. Poison. Okay, yeah, fair. $5, right? Oh, cool. Gee acres. Okay. So about this alibi? Ooh. Okay, okay, okay. Um, that's a 1 and a 1 and a 7 goes like that. What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. That's a 5. That's a 6. That's a 6 as well. That's a full 4. That's a 4. Okay, that's a 6. Whoops. That's too far. That's a 3. That's a 2. That is a 3. Okay. That is a full on 4. That's a 3. That's part of the 2. These are nothing. That's a 3. That's a 5. That is a 6. That's a 2. That is a 6 right there. That's a 1 and a 2. That is a 1. That is a 3 and a 1. That is complete. That is a 1. There we go. That's a 1 right there. So that's the 2. That's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 3. That's a 3. Okay. That is a 2, 1. Okay. That's a 1. That's a 1 as well. It has to be a 1. So the 2 has to go there. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a 4. That's a 1. That is a 2. That is a 1. That's a 2. Okay. It's a 4. That's a 1. It's an 8. That's the 1. Okay, okay, okay. That's part of the 2. Okay, let's clean up something. So these can't be anything. These can't be anything either. Oh, that's a 1 and 3. Okay, that's a 2. That is a 4. Okay. So that's a 1 and a 1. How about the 4? Okay, okay, okay. That's a 1. That is a 1. That is a 3. Okay, so that's a 1 and a 3. That's nothing. That is nothing. So that's a 2. That's a 1 and a 1. Okay, that's a 2. That's complete. What do we have here? Not much. Okay. That's a 5. That's a 2. That's a 2. That's a 2. That's nothing. That's a 1. I say 2. That right there is a 1 and a 2. That's a 1. Oops, that's a 1. That's a 1. That's... Oh, actually, I don't know that for sure. Okay. Well, that's an 8. That's a 1. Okay, so now I do. That's a 7. That is a 2. Yes. That is... Okay, that's a 2. And we're done. It is... What's that? Matchbook. Where from? Oh. a big question. Yep. Okay. Scout. Cool. What a lovely little guy. Okay. Uh, yeah, I don't think there's anything else we need to talk about. Okay, yeah, what do you know about Crispin? Oh, okay, so that's all, I guess. Do you have anything else to show? I don't think so. Uh, yeah. Oh, I don't think so. Okay. Let's go to the bar. Okay, okay, yeah. As I suspected, this might be a lone shark or something. Lone shark guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, clearly, he looks like it, right? I think. Cool. There's something to find around here. There was. Okay. Where is it? What's this? What's this? Okay, where do we start? On three, two. Oh, I don't know. One, two, three. One, two, one, one, two, three. That's too far. How about this one? Two, one, two, three, four. Okay, that's more helpful. Uh, that can't be the only one. No, there's gotta be something else. How about this one? Yeah, that's more like it. There we go. Okay. What can we get from this? Well, there's a 5. Um. Oh. What is this one? What is grace? Okay. 4, 4. There's that one. Oh. No, sorry. Okay. That is a. Okay, so this has to be 1. This has to be a 2. 2, 3. Nope. Oh, okay. Oh, this is a full row. Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's done, and that's a 1. That is a 3, so that's a 5. And that's a 3. Okay. That's a 1. That's a 5. That's a 3. That's a 4. So that goes right there. That's a 3. That's a 2. Okay. That's a 1. Okay, so that's the 3. 4. Okay, okay, okay. That's a 1. That's a 2. Oops, that's a 2 as well. There's a dog. There's a dog barking outside my house. Okay. 3. 3. Yes. Oh, there we go. That's a 6. 1, 2, 2, 4, 5, 3. Yes, okay. 2, 2. Okay, that's nothing. That's nothing. That's oh, that no, that's not sure. Okay, okay. Oops, what is that? No, that's fine. That's a 3. Okay, so it is a 2, and that is a 5. That's good. That is a 5 as well. That's a 1 and 2. That is a 2. That's done. That's a 2. Okay, so that's done. That's done, I'm pretty sure. That's a 4. That's a 3. Okay. Oops. Oops. There we go. That's complete. And that's a 2. That's a 2 and a 1. That's a 5. That's a 3. That's a 4. That is a 3 and a 1. That's a 2. 1. Hello? Oh, is this a 3? this doesn't make much sense. I must have made a mistake somewhere. Okay. Okay, let's keep at it. We're gonna find. We're sure to find what the problem is at some point. So that can be it. But to make this 2, okay. This a 1, that's a 3, okay. Oh, that's complete. That's a 2. Oh, that's complete as well. Oh, what's this? Okay. That means this a 1, that means this a 1, okay. That means these are 4 this way. Okay, that's a 3. Let me say 1. Oh, it could be like this. That makes sense. Okay. Alright. This is complete. That is a 2. That is a 1 of the ones. Oh, that's a 1 over 1. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, yep, that's a 4. That's a 1. That's complete. That is a 1 there. That's a 1 and that's a 3. We did it. We did it. What's this? What's this? Mascot's body. Oh. Ooh, we're getting closer. Spin. What are you? What are you? What are you doing? Hehehe. Cool. Business. Oh, cool. I mean, okay. Is there anything that we can show you? Sure. Okay. Okay, yeah. Apparently absolutely nothing. Unless... Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I don't think. Unless... No, okay. Bye. Friend. Oh, search a find. Search a find. What's this? What's this? Okay, there's 2 things I think. Is that a bag? Okay, this seems too lazy. 8, 2, 3. Okay, that's a full row. 1, 1, 2. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. Uh-huh. 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 Yeah, this has to be before, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, where... What is going on? Okay, so that's a 5, so it can go up to there. That is a 4, so it can go down to there. That's that, and the 3. Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's a 4. Oops. Okay. 1. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Okay. That's a 2, that's a 4, that's a 5, that's complete. That's a 2, that means that's not a 3, that's a 4. That is a 4, that is a 4 as well, so that's a 1 down here. That's a 2 on a 2. Okay, 1, 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay. That's a 4. That's a 4. And that's as far as the 5 goes. That's a 4, so that's a 2. Okay, okay. That's a 2, so that's the 1. That's a 5. Yeah, that's also a 5. That's a 3 on the 2. That is undetermined. No, it's a 2. Okay. Well, this has to be the 3, right? The 4 is there. That's a 1 or a 2. It's not decisive. So that's a 3. That's a 2. That is the 1 after the 9. I don't know how to take that. Okay, to be fair, I'm just saying numbers out loud. For no particular reason. Like, I don't need to. You know what I should do? I should just have a recording of you saying random numbers to see if it affects me at all. It probably would. It would get really annoying very quickly, I'm pretty sure. I can't even think of random numbers to say. 7, 8, 3, 35, 76, 2, 57, 74. That's something. I can't. You're making it difficult. Are you not even doing it? Okay. That's a 2. That's a 1. Okay. Okay, that's a 2, that's a 1. No, that's a 2, that's a 2, that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 1, that's a 1, that's a 1. Okay. Now I got my rhythm back. That's a 3, that's a 3. That is complete. That is a... Oops, that is a 4 right there. You lovely little menace. Okay. And we're done. What is this? An X-ray. Okay. Oh yeah. She did have an injury a while ago. She did mention that. Where's my phone? Oh, dated today. Today? Huh? That doesn't make sense. Yeah, there was something else. Somewhere around here. Yes. A wig. Huh. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't want to say numbers anymore. Hmm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Oops. Oh, a 9. Lovely. Say the numbers. Alright, alright. I will say all of the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I believe. Pretty sure it's 8 after that. 9, I think. Alright, alright. Let's stop being so silly. Yeah, how... That's a 1. That is a 2 somewhere in there. That is a 3 in there. 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 5, 3, No, it's okay, it's okay. Yep, there's a 4, and there's a 3, and there's a 3, and there is a 9. That's a 2, and a 2, and a 3, and a 1, 2, 3. 6. 6. Oh, no. Okay, there we go. That's a 2, that is a 4 somewhere in there. Okay, that's a 6. That is a 5, so that's a 2. That is a 2 somewhere in there. That's a 5, so that's a 1. That is a 7, so that goes up to there. That's a 4, so that goes up to there. That's a 1. Oh, and a 6, I forgot. That is a 6, that is a 2 and a 2. Okay, that's a 1, so that's a 2. Oh, so that's the 5. Okay, okay, that's a 4. Oh, that's a 6. Okay, that is the 7 then. That's a 2. That is a 2, and that is a 3. Okay, okay, okay. That's a 2, that's a 5, that's a 4, that's a 2, that's a 1, that's a 2. That is a, whoops, nope, no, there we go. Okay, that's a 3, that's a 3, that's a 1, that's a 1. That's a, wait, that's nothing, that's a 3. That's a 1, that's a 1, that's a 3. 2, 7, 2. Oh, there we go. Yep, there we go. 4, 4. No, that's too far. Okay, that is a 2. That is a 2 on the 1. You're done. It is. What's this? Oh, it's the head. Cool. It's addressed to her. Okay, okay. It's the head of the mascot. The mannequin that's supposed to be on stage. That was beheaded for some reason. They sent her the head. That's weird. What? I didn't know you were here. Okay. Right downstairs. Oh. I don't think that's true at all. Okay. What can you tell us about this? I don't think that's true. It was... Well, okay, whatever. Oh, Crispin is your sugar daddy. No. How did... Of course he's too Weasley. No, it was pretty obvious that he was being like a loan shark or something. Yeah. Would that be it? I don't know. Okay, so yeah, uh, we just came up with the theory that maybe Crispin was the guy who drove the parade thingy into the bar as a threat, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know. It wouldn't be the first time we make an accusation and we ended up being wrong. Then again, we have already made an accusation and we ended up being wrong. So maybe I don't know though. I don't know. It's not convincing enough for me. I don't think. But other than that, we don't really have any clues as to who else it might be. Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see where it takes us. Fine. It is a bake-off. Let's go. What? Oh no, we're being pointed a gun at. What? Scared of you? I mean, look at him. He looks kind of twitchy, don't you think? Okay, I don't think we've mentioned the name to him before, so I don't know. Cool. Nice lighter, bro. Okay, we're going back to the police station. Mr. Lars. Oh, okay. Christian Hickwell. Yeah, okay. Okay. Just hacking to the database. Again. Okay. Okay. Ooh. Uh, did you mean handshake protocol? Okay, anyway. Let's go. We have a minute 50 to solve 5 puzzles. Let's do it. Up, 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 up. Okay. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, okay. There is a penalty if we get these ones wrong. It subtracts from the remaining time. That's good to know. Um, okay. That is a 2 and the 1. That is a 5 and a 5, 2, 2, 3. Okay, that is a 2 on the 2, and there we go. Oh, there we go. We're just missing the 1. There we go. Holy shiza, 400 kilobytes. Yeah, okay. Current address. But Okay. Sure, let's just go see an armed man who told us to not mess with him. What's the worst that can happen? Doesn't even bring backup. Why would we need any help or backup, right? Let's just go in there. Oh, okay. So this is probably where the parade thing got, like, taken from, right? That would make sense. It had to come from somewhere. Oh, okay. Calm down. Let's see. We have the tread marks in there. Let's see. We have something else. So far, we found two things, I think. Yeah, we'll take a look at them in a moment. Yeah, okay. Let's start with that. Where is it? There we go. Ooh. Okay, one, and two. 36. 52. 12. 7. 56. 372. What other numbers are there? I mean, there's so many of them. There are too many numbers sometimes, I think. Why do we even need so many numbers? Like, there aren't that many things. Like, of anything, right? I think they're just... Do you think that maybe they're, like, just compensating for something? Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-dum. 2, 1. Okay, 1. 5. 2, 1. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 7, 4. 65. On the quarter. Yep. Oh, what now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. That's helpful. Yep, very helpful. Oh, and also that's a 1. Yeah, so that's a 2 on there. Okay. Now we're making some progress again. That is a 2. Yep. Okay. And we're stuck again. Cool. Oh no, that's a 3. That's a 2, that's complete, that's a 5, and that's a 2. That is, whoops, that is completely done. That is a 4, and that is part of 4. That is a 2, so that's done. That is a 2, so we're in there. There we go. Oh, that's nothing. That's a 4. That is a 3 right there. That's a 1. That's a 2. That's a 4. So that's part of the 2. So that's a 1. What? There we go. That's a 1. That's complete. That's a 1 and a 3. That 3 is complete. That's a 2. 1. 1 and 2. Oh, that's complete. And that's... There we go. That's a 2 on the 1. That's a 1. And we're done. About a padlock. Ooh. It's broken, right? It's gotta be. There you go. It's a broken padlock. Twisted. Yeah. Cool. Ooh. Okay. There was something else. Around here. There we go. Teeth 1, 2, and 10. That's a complete column. And so is this, I believe. I let her know you said hi once she decides to come back inside. That is a 3, right? So this is a 4. Okay, that is a 3, so that is complete. That is a 5, so that's that. This has to be the 5, so the 2 goes there. That's a 1. That's a 1 then, because this is the 6. That's a 3. The 6 is complete, and that 3 is nothing. So they're good with that 2. Okay, that is a 7 right there. That is a 1. That is a 1 right there as well. That's a 1. That's a 3. That is a 7, and that's a 2, and that is a 2 at least, could be the 5. That's the 1. Can't be the 2. That's the 5, that's a 1. Okay, so that's done. That is an 8, that's the 2. Cool. That's a 2. That is a 1. That is the 2 as well. That is the 2 right there. That's the 2. Okay. That's the 2, and that's the 2, and that's done. This is a 5. That is an 8. This could be the 1 or the 4. This has to be a 1, can't be the 4. Okay, also this is complete. Also this is a 4. Also this is a 1, and that is a 5, and that is oh, this has to be part of the 5, and the 4. Okay, that's a 5. That is something. That's a 3, okay. That's a 3 as well, yes, and that is a 4, okay. That's a 1. That's a 1. That's a 2 and a 1. Yep, that's a 3. That is a 4 and a 1. Oops, that's a 1. That's a 4 then. That's a 1. And that's a 1. Okay. Okay. It's a 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. Done. That's a 5 there. That's a 5 there. That's a 4 there. That's a 1. That's complete. That's nothing. So that's a 2. That's a 1. So the 1 goes there. That's a 2. That's a 1. Oh, there you go. Hello? Oh, well, there's nothing here. So that's the 1, so that's the 2. So that's a 2. Oops, that's a 2. So that's a 1, and that's complete. So that is a 1 there, and there. It's the other shoe! It's a sneaker, right? Oh, we're getting closer and closer. Top. Okay. Yeah, I know it matches the other one. But how? Why? Very true. I mean, it's possible. Yeah, okay. Is that all there is to find? The killer was here. Crispin smashed into the parking lot. The parade float was running from here. Yeah, that's what I was saying. The parade float was running from here. Oh, you were right. It is a parade float. I didn't know that. Cool. That is what they are called. I should believe you more often. A Jane's shoe. That's assuming it was Crispin. It's pointing at us. Huh? Oh, okay. We're getting a flashback. Salt Moon. It's dead. Uh-oh. Oh, that's fun. Okay. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, that's not the time now. Ooh. Did he get shot? Apparently, okay. Oh, okay. How many bullets does this guy have? And we're here. Oh, 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 okay. All right, yeah. So I was hoping that something was going to change after Scott had been shot, and apparently we don't have access to the hints right now. Right? Which I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't looked for it because I'm not using the hints. But yeah, that's fun. That's fun. I was hoping that. Nah, never mind. Maybe it would have been fun if like some of the hints, the numbers on the top or the left, hadn't been there. I think that would have been really fun. But maybe that would have been maybe that would make the puzzle impossible. It does take place in the US. It takes place in LA. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Somewhere around the 1990, the late 1990s, I believe. One, two, three. That's a one. That's a three. That's a okay. Up, 6, 2, 2, 7. Let's go. That's a three. 5. Okay. 1. Okay. 9. Okay. 6. Very good. Very good. That is a number. Oh, 3. Cool. Oh, and 2. Those are all numbers. They're all very fun numbers. That's too much, isn't it? Yes. Okay. So that's not there. That's 2. That's 3. Yeah, okay. That's a 5. That's a 6, and that's a 2, and that's a 3, and a 2. Okay, that's a 5. That's a 4. That is a 3, and a 1. What's this? What's this? Oh, 1. Okay. Oh, a 7. Let's go. And a 3. That's a 2 actually. Okay, it is that one. 2, 2, 2. 1, 2. Oh, that's not right. Okay, there we go. Fixed. Fixed. Okay, fixed again. Hehehe. That's a 6. That's a 1. That's a 3. And that's another 3. That's nothing. That is a 6. That is a 1. That's complete. That's a 3. That's a 2. That's done. That's a 1. That's a 2. This is probably the 4. It's gotta be. Yeah, it's gotta be. It has to be. 1. Um, 6, 3, 7. Oh, okay. 2, 1, 4, 1, 1. 1, 6. This has to be part of the 6. Okay, actually, there we go. 1, 2. 7, 1, 1. That is a 2. That's complete. Okay. Okay, that's a 3, so that's for the 3. Oh, a 1 and a 4. Okay. That's a 1, that's a 3. 2. Oops. 3. Okay. That's a 1. That's cool, that's cool, that's cool. It's a 1. Okay, okay, okay. Oops, that's too many. That's a 3. Okay, okay, okay. That's the remaining ones. There, and there, and the 3. Cool, we found the radio, I think. The police radio. Let's go. Look at that score. Look at it soar. Okay. Maps are under fire. Ooh. That's not the code. Couldn't you have called the police? Or was that not like implemented at that time? I don't know, I don't know. I need to get back. Who are you? Oh, I remember who you are. I'm Scout. Huh? Jack. Okay. Sure. Let's interrogate him. Who are you? Jack Larson. Okay. Oh yeah, so this is the CEO of the company that Tully worked for, I think? Or the company that Ryan, our ex-husband, contacted. Uh, yeah, one of the two. Or both, actually. I think it's both. Yep, okay. Again, why do I bother remembering things? Okay, what are you doing here? Who's being interrogated? Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Oh, what's this? What's this? Okay, so that's a 4, that's a 2, that is a 2. That's a 4, and that's a 1, so that's the 6. That is either 1 or a 2? Okay, that's a 1. That is the only 2 on the column, that's a 5, that's a 2, that's a 5 right there, that's the 2, okay. That is... as far as I go. Okay. This is probably the 3, yes. So the 5, okay, 1, 2, 3... No, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's the 4. That's a 2. That has to be a 1. The 12 doesn't go further than that. That's a 1. The 6 and the 6. Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so that's nothing. Oh, so the 7, we have that. That's a 5, that's a 3, that's an 8, up to there. That is a 2, and that is a 6, and that is a 3. Okay, that's a 2. That is a 2. That's a 5. Okay, it's a 3. It's a 2. That's a 2, 3. Okay, that's a 2. That is a 7. Okay, 1, 3. 3 goes up to there. That is a 2, and that's the other 2. That's a 1. That is a 1. That's a 2. Okay, that's a 5. That the 6 extends to there. The 7 goes to here. That's the 3. That's a 1. This is 6. So the 3. That 5 is done. So that's a 2. That's an 8 up to there. That's a 5. That's a 1. That's a 3. That's a 4. Okay, that could be the 1. Oh, actually, it's the 5 and the 1 there. That's a 3, that's a 3, that's a 2, that's a 1. Okay, that is done, so that's the 3. So that's a 1. That's a 2, and that's there. That 12 is fine, I think. Yeah, that's nothing, I'm pretty sure, yeah. Oh, that's a 1, so that's a 12. That goes up to there. That's a 2, that's a 1, that's a 2, so that's a 3, that's a 1, that's complete, that's a 2, that is a 6. That's a 5, that's a 1, yes. 1, 3, 6, 3, 1, 3. Numbers. 6, 1, 3, 5. Is this a business card? Okay. Looks a bit thick for a business card. Fancy. It's all white. Oh. Yeah. Let's go. But you shot a man. Yeah, let's go back. Huh? Oh, okay. Close one? Hehehe. Oh. Yeah. We sort of figured that out already. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Me too. Yeah, but that That doesn't mean he did it. Yeah, I don't think we have a clear idea on who actually did it. Who stole the thing and crashed it into the bar. Okay. What do we have here? That's a 3, that's a 6, oops. 2, 2, 3, 2, that's a 5, so that is a 3, and a 3, and that's a 4, so that's a 2, 8, that's there, that's a 3, okay. Bottom. 1, 1, 2, 2, okay, 2, okay, we're going back, that's a 4, that's a 2, that is an 8, all the way to here. That is a 1, that's a 5, 3, 4, 5, oh, that's complete. And 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1. You think it's Fran? You think she was committing like insurance fraud or something like that? Oops. Because there are many things that we have to ask ourselves, right? You know, to solve it, this thing, right? Like, first of all, who, but why? It's also important. Um, the guy who died, like, was that an accident or was that premeditated? Like, was he the target of the whole thing? I don't think he was. I think that that was just very unfortunate. Uh, oh, I made a mistake in here. No, I didn't. I mean, yes, I did, but there it is. Of all the people we've met, who could have done it? There is Fran, that is a very real possibility. I mean, what reasons could anybody else have for doing that, right? There is too quick to blame it on Crispin. Yeah, that is true. Oh, actually, they were talking about the contracts. So maybe if something happened to the bar, maybe that meant that she didn't have to keep paying for it. Right? So maybe she was committing fraud. We'd have to read the contracts, right? We'd have to get deep into it. Ooh, what's this? It's another padlock. Oh, it's a key fob. Okay. Oh. You do not understand the relevance. Okay. Apparently. Allegedly. Okay. Ooh, cool. Yeah, let's hack a little bit. Okay. Let's do this. Let's do this. So how did they do this part? I think they have a set of pre-generated puzzles, and they just choose it random from that set. Because I don't think they're generating these ones randomly, because they could run the risk of making the puzzle unsolvable. Okay, anyways. Okay. He entered at 9:14, didn't leave at 8:20. Okay. Oh, somebody mentioned the time for something else, and I don't remember what it was for. I think it was Ross, who left at 11:30, and she met the guy then. So he would have been still alive by then. So yeah, okay. Oh, that is right. Rose did have an alibi. Yeah, because she was at the other bar when it happened, I guess. Ooh, look at that. Oh, poor KC, right. Yeah, let's go. Let's see, let's see. Hello? Oh. Oh, okay. Cool. He shot at us, yeah. Horrible lane, though. Oh, yeah. Ooh, is there something here to find in here? Let's see, let's see, let's see. Okay, there's a couple of things. Somewhere around here, I think. 11. Ooh, 7, let's go. That's a full on 8. Okay, and a 4, and a 4. That's cool, that's pretty cool. That is not a 1, that's a 3. Okay. That is a 2, so that's a 4, that's a 4, okay. That's something. Okay. That is a 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, cool. 2. That's a 3, okay, okay. Okay. What else? What else? What else? Oh, that's gonna be a 4. Not that one, that one. That's a 1. Okay. That's a 1. This has to be one of the 2s. This is a 1 and the 6. Okay. It's a 1, 1. That's a 2. That is a 1. Okay. That should be the 1 or the 4. Okay. Oh, that's a 2 right there. That's a 2. That's a 3. That is right. Can't be anything else. That's a 5. So the 11 is done. That's the 1. So that is done. That... we don't know. Yeah, we don't know yet. That's a 2 though. Okay, so that's a 4. That's a 1. That's complete. That's a 3. That is a 2. That is a 2 and a 3. Oops. And a 3. That is a 7 and a 1. That is done. That is a 2 on the 1 and the 4. Okay, cool. Okay, 2. 5. That is a 2 on the 2. And a 4. And a 2. And a 1. 4. That is a 1. No, we don't know that. That's a 3. Okay. That's a 1 and the 2 and the 2. That is a 1. So that's the 3. That's the 1. Um, that's the 4, right? So that's a 3. That's a 5. Okay. That's a 1 as well. That can't be the 2, I'm pretty sure. So the 2 has to be there. Okay. Well, that's the 8. That is something. That's a 3. So that's the 1, so that's a 3. So that's nothing. So the 2 can't be there. So it has to be here. So that's the 3. So that's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 3. Yep. That's a 1 and that's a 1. So that's the 2. So there's a 2 in there. So that's the 2. That's a 3. That is a 1 and a 2. There we go. There we go. But that can't be. That can't be. That's done. So that's a 2. That's the 3. That's a 2. That's done. That's done. That's a 3. That is done. That's there. So that's the 8. That's a 1. Whoops. No, that is correct. That is a 3. The 8 is done. That's a 3. That's a 3. And we're done. We have found a shoebox. A box for shoes. Ooh. Oh, we're getting closer. Package for friend. How? Okay. What do you mean they match? If they're like the same brand or whatever? Model? Okay. Okay, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, oops. Okay, okay. Yeah, there's also an 11 in here, so that's all the way there. There's a 9. Goes there. Okay, so that's a 2. That's a 2 as well. That's a 2. That can't be anything, so that's gotta be the 2. Which means here goes the 4. Well, the 4 goes here, I think. That's a 2, so it goes like that. This completes the 11. That gives us a 7. That's a 1. That's a 4. That's a 1 and a 1. The 7 goes up to here. That's a 1, 1, 1. Okay. What else? It's gonna be 1. But that's nothing. That's nothing. What's this? 7, 8, 9. Okay, so that's that. This has to be the 3. Yeah, that doesn't tell us much. Oh, the 7, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Oh, and this other 7, of course. That's still enough for the 6. So is this one. The 6 is on one of these sides, but which one? Oh, how about this one? 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't do much, I don't think. Oh well, actually, it's that. Okay. That's a 1. This is the 3, right? Yes, yes it is. That's a 1 or a 1. That's a 1, so that's the 1 as well. So that's a 3, so that's a 1. Oh. Jeepers, I don't know. Well, there's a 3 there. And well, there's nothing else in here. So that's a 1. So is that a 1? Okay. Oh, that's something in there. That's a 2, so that's 3 in there. That's a 1. That's nothing. That's nothing. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. That's a 4. Oh. Oh. Okay, that's a 1. Okay, so that's not the 6, so the 6 goes here. Okay, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2. Okay, 2. So the 8 is there. That's a 2. Okay, that's a 2, 2, 2. That's a 2 again. That is a 1, so that's the 1. That's the 7 completes of the 2. That is a 4. So there's a 1 in there. There's a 2. Which means all of this is complete. That is a part of 7, 3, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 7, 7, 1, yes, 1, 2, 4, yes, that's complete. That's a 3 and a 1, and oh, there we go, 2, 1, and we go. What's this? A plane ticket? Okay, well, we did find the guy's passport with him, the victims. Edwin Tinker. I We've heard that name before, I think. Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, okay. Hmm. Okay. So what is going on? 25 miles. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Oh, hello. I guess. Okay, so about that, the ticket is a one-way trip. Okay. So does that mean we can look into it? Yes, let's go. Or was it somewhere around here? There we go. Let's see, let's see, let's see. One, one, okay. Oh, these things look like good numbers. Oh, they're not. Two, two, one, two, three. We were right. Okay. Same thing here. Up, up. Oh, I'm making mistakes. What's going on? Three, two, one. Oh, okay. There we go. There we go. That's more like. So 1 and the 4, and the 5, and the 1, and the 2 and the 2. Okay, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so that's a 1 and a 2. 4, 9. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, so those are 2, those are 3. That's a 7. Okay, that's a 3, and that's a 3. That's a 2, 1, 2. That's a 6. Okay. That's a 3. So the 10 goes there. Ba-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da-bum. Okay, so that's 2. So the 7 goes there. That's the 3. The 2's go there. 1, 1, 1, 1. That's not a 4. That's a 2. That's a 2, 3, 1. 2. 1, 2, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 4. Okay. That's a 1. That's a 2. That's a 9. That's a 2. 6. Well, the 3 goes there. That's a 2. Oh, that's an 8. Okay. I didn't even see it. Okay, 1, 1. 2 and 2. Okay, that's a 1 as well. That's a 1 as well. That's a 2. That's a 1. That's a 3. Okay, okay. That's a bunch of 2s. Okay. What else? What else? What else? There's a 1. There's a bunch of 1s in there. That doesn't look so helpful. Okay. 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay. Oh, 6. Okay, that's 3, and that's a 1. Makes this a 1. Okay. 2, 1, 2. Okay, that's a 1. That's a 4. That makes this a 2 and a 2. Makes these the 5. Okay. Oops. That's a 1. 6, 2, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, amazing. Buff, 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 buff. That's a 2, okay, that's 2 right there, that can't be the, oops, actually that can still, what's going on? 3, 1, 3, okay, that's something, there we go, that's a 4, that's nothing, that's a 2, oops, okay, that's a 4 and 4, that's nothing, that's a 1, that's a 4, that's a mistake, that is 6, okay, that is a 2, that is a 3, 2, okay, that is nothing, that's a 2, that is done, that's a 4, that's a 3. That's a 1, that's a 2, that's nothing, done, done, and done. That is a 2 there, that is a 2 and a 2 there. We're almost done. No, okay. Oh, there we go. It's the safe. Cool. Oh, come on. Okay. Okay. 5 and 5. That's a 3 and 1. 4, 2, 2, 2. Okay, what else? 5, 4, 3, 1. 3, 2, 2, 3. There we go. That's it. 3 and a 1 and a 3 and the 5 and the 4 and the 3 and a 1 and the 1 and a 3 and the 3 and the 1 1 3 2 1 1 1 2 4 1 2 2 there there and there. Okay, well done. What did we find? Okay. Would you look at that? It's an insurance policy. It's looking more and more like you were right. Yes, can we go talk to her now? Nope, doesn't seem like it. Nope. Oh, come on. Look. Yeah, it would be. I mean, um, the argument they have, the excuse is that it's an electronic lock. Yeah, like yeah. So far, there's only been two different kinds of puzzles. You would be finding they have different, if they had different ones. I'm not sure how you'd make it different. I guess it doesn't. It wouldn't need to have the time ticking down. Yeah, I'm not really sure how you'd make it different, but there's gotta be a way, right? Boy. Okay. Okay. Come on. Oh Jesus. That wasn't a kick, but okay. Okay, fine. We'll choose from a set of options in a dialogue instead of presenting evidence. You're planning on coming back. Uh, no. Use Roxy. Do you mean Ross? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, yeah, she's fucking awesome. You stole the parade float and crashed it into the club. Give me a second. I have to help my doggy get up onto the bed. And we're back. Like all of these problems that she keeps bringing up, like you don't have evidence for this and all that, and I do have the evidence. I just want to show it off. Come on, it's the whole point of the game. You have Picross puzzles to solve, and you get evidence from that, and you didn't use them. Come on. Oh, I found the sneaker stuck onto the fence. Ooh. Okay. Where do we start? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 2. No, I didn't. I forgot. I forgot. Just give me a second. She's too far away. I'll do it later. Um. Oh, what do we do now? 1, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 1, 2. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Okay. That's not super helpful. There's a bunch of ones. That's that. There we go. That's that. There. Oh, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 and 2. Okay. That's helpful. 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. That's a 1. That's a 2. That's hmm. That has to be a 1. And the 3 has to go there. Okay. That has to be a 1. That has to be a 2. The 7 goes all the way down here then. Okay. Okay, that doesn't do much. Okay. Oh, what a fool I am being. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 2, 8, 2, 1, 3, 7, 3. Okay, 4. Yes, yes, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 2. Okay, 4, 4. Okay. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2. Okay, 1. 1. Okay. 3, the 2, the 1, the 2, the 5. 1, 3, okay. 1 on 1. That's a 2. That has to be a 1. 1. Oh. What now? Okay, so this is, oops, so this is a 1, so this is a 5. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I mean, yeah, that's something. Okay, the 3 can't be there, so that's the 2. Oops, it's not the 2, that's the 3, that's the 2. Okay. That's 3, that's a 2, that's a 3 again. Okay, 2, 1. Okay, that is done. And done. And done. That's a 1. That's a 2. That is done. That's a 1. Okay, that's a 1. That is done. That's a 4. A 2. Okay, what now? Oh, 3 and 1. There, 2. 1. Okay, and we're done. What's this? Dial imprint? What? crazy. In the crush. Uh, oh, okay. I okay, yep. Oh, come on. It's me. What? Okay. Wow, alright. Okay, okay. Yeah, there's, I don't think there's much new to say about this case that I haven't said about the other ones, right? It was fun. It was an interesting story. There was a twist at the end. Like in all the other ones, we made an accusation at first, and it turned out to be wrong. So you know, I didn't get an S rank though. That means I'm gonna have to play it again at some point. Uh, which, to be perfectly honest, doesn't sound that fun. Uh, but yeah, I have to complete it, right? So yeah. In the meantime, I guess I could play some of the puzzles that did get unlocked from that. There you go. Yeah, we're missing out on two puzzles because of that. That's a shame. That's a shame. Yeah, let's do the F puzzles. In the meantime, to relax, to get our minds off of the case, let's do some puzzles. Okay, that is a 2 and that is a 2. Yeah, so there can't be anything here. Right, that's a 3, that is a 6, that is a 2, okay. 1, 2, 2. There we go. No, I don't know that. Okay, there we go. 2, 2, 6. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 3. 4, 2, 2. 4, 1. 5, 2. Okay. That's done. Mm, 3. Okay. That's a 4. That's a 1. That's a 1, so that's a 3. Okay, so that's the 2. Ooh. Oh, okay. Never mind. So that's the 2. Yeah, that's the 2 again. There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. And now we're cooking. Yep. 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 And we are not done. There's been a mistake somewhere. Is it this one? It's gotta be. There we go. It is cigarettes. Huh. Okay. Let's do 2 more, and I think that will be enough because it is getting kind of late, and there's not like we finished the case, right? There's not much to do, at least today. Bum, 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 bum. 5, 3, 1, 6. That is 4, 5, 6. Okay. 11, 2. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. There's 2. Oh, 4 and 8. Okay, that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4, 5, 4, 1, and 6. Okay. That's a 1 and a 3. That closes on the 6. 2. And it's gotta be the 5 then. Okay. Okay, that's part of the 5. That's part of the 4. That's part of the 4. Part of the 3. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. That's a 1. That's a 6. And that's a 4. That's complete. And that's a 2 in there. That is a 4. That's a 5. That is a 3. That is a 10 somewhere in there. Yeah, that's a 2. That's a 2. That's a 3. That's a 3. That's a 6. That's a 7. That's a 5. No, that's a 1 and the 5 and the 2. That's the 7 in there. Oops. That's a 2. That's a 2 again. That's a 3. That's a 3 as well. 1 and 1. 3. 1. 1. There's a 5 in there, there's a 3 in there, there's a 3 in there, on the 1, that goes to the 5, that's a 7, that's a 3, and the 3, and the 2, and the 4. Yeah. And it's a 1, and that's a 1 as well. This is an 8, that is a 10, that's an 11, that's a 3, 2, 6, the 2, the 1, 4, 3. Oh, that shouldn't be there. That's a 3, and that's a 3, and that is a 4. And, what are we? what's going on? Oh, okay. What's this? Disco ball. Cool. Alright. The final one for today. 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. Yes. Okay. 1, 2, 3. That's a 1. 3, 4, 2, 3. Oh, what am I doing? There we go. Well, the 2 has to go there. This is part of the 3. Which means that's part of the 3, so that's nothing. Oh, that's part of the 2. So that's the 1. That's the 2, that's a 1, that's the 3, that's the 2, that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3. That has to be the 2, which means it's a 1. That's the rest of the ones in that row. That covers that 1, that's a 4. That's a 3. Okay, what now? That's a 3, so that's nothing, that's a 4. That is 1, 1, 2, no. Huh. What? No. Okay, there you go. That's a 3. That's a 1. Yeah, 1. 1. 1, 3, 3, 3. Nothing, so that's the 2. Oh, okay, 3, 2, okay. That's a 1, yes. Okay. That is a 1. That is a 3. That is a 1. 1, okay. Yeah, we are done. Home tree. Home tree. That's fun. Okay. Yeah. So, I think that's gonna be it for today. It was fun. Nothing like, you know, too special that I have said before already. But, I mean, the story keeps going forward. So, tomorrow, I think, tomorrow we're gonna see how it ends. Since tomorrow we're gonna be playing the last case, I think. Unless they have a secret 5th case, wouldn't that be fun? But yeah. And after that, yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna be doing. I should write down at some point the things I've learned, like, for playing this game, right? Just recording is not enough. Because otherwise I'm not really gonna remember. But yeah. Yeah, so that's it for today, I think. It was fun. Thanks for hanging out. I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!